back. Good evening. The January 5th, 2026 City Council meeting will come to order. Ms. Thomas, will you call the roll?
Councilor Fleischer?
Aye.
Councilor Oshrin?
Here.
Councilor Payne?
Here.
Councilor Snook?
Here.
Councilor Wade?
Here.
All right, very good. Ms. Fleischer, welcome to the dais and welcome to your service as a City Council member. Is there a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. This meeting is divided into several sections, including an organizational meeting where council will select its mayor and vice mayor, a work session to hear reports that require no vote, a closed meeting, and the regular city council business meeting. As city manager, I will fill the role of presiding officer until council officers are elected. The next order of business is the election of mayor and vice mayor for two-year terms ending December 31st, 2027. Both positions are elected by majority vote of the city council. The person elected to serve as mayor will preside over city council meetings, may call special meetings, makes some appointments to advisory boards, and serves as the head of government for ceremonial purposes and official functions. The vice mayor substitutes whenever the mayor is not available. The members of city council will be given an opportunity to nominate an individual councilor to serve as council's presiding officer and mayor, and may make brief remarks in support of the nomination up to 2 minutes. Following a nomination, I will call for a second. Once the nomination has been seconded, the nominee will be given the opportunity to accept or decline the nomination. I will then call for any additional nominations. If any nomination fails to receive a second, that nomination fails and will not be voted upon. Once all nominations are completed, the clerk of council will conduct a roll call vote, and each member will be asked to identify one specific nominee for whom the member is casting his or her vote. If no nominee receives a majority vote, the clerk of council will call for a revote on the two nominees with the most votes. We will repeat the process for vice mayor. I now open the floor for nominations for the position of mayor. Self-nominations are also acceptable.
I would like to make a motion for Juan Diego Wade to remain as mayor.
Second.
For having, together with Lloyd, having been here the longest, I suspect a decision's already been made, but for the purposes of discussion, I would nominate myself.
Is there a second? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations for the position of mayor are now closed. Ms. Thomas, will you please call a roll call vote?
Councilor Payne?
Sure, yes.
Councilor Oshrin?
Yes.
Councilor Wade?
Yes.
Councilor Snook?
Yes.
Councilor Fleischer?
Yes.
So by a vote of 5-0, council has selected Juan Diego Wade as mayor of the city of Charlottesville for the two-year term ending December 31st, 2027. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I now open the floor for nominations for the position of vice mayor. Self-nominations are acceptable.
I nominate Councilor Natalie Oshrin as vice mayor, for vice mayor.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And do you accept the nomination?
I do, thank you.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations for the position of vice mayor are now closed. Ms. Thomas, will you please call a roll call vote?
Councilor Payne?
Yes.
Councilor Oshrin?
Yes.
Councilor Wade?
Yes.
Councilor Snook?
Yes.
Councilor Fleischer?
Yes.
By a vote of 5-0, council has selected Natalie Oshrin as vice mayor for the city of Charlottesville for the two-year term ending December 31st, 2027. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
We will now open remarks for our 2026-27 mayor and vice mayor.
I just, appreciate the confidence of my colleagues to continue on the last 2 years. I believe with all of us, we have moved the city forward, and I look forward to continue serving the city, representing council. I've enjoyed it, and I have the capacity to do it more now that I've retired, although sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but I love the great city of Charlottesville, and I love to serve it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel like over the last 2 years, I've developed a really great partnership with the folks up here and with several key leaders in city staff, and I'm looking forward to not just moving Charlottesville forward, but moving Charlottesville forward in different ways, and hope that we can continue to push a robust agenda that continues to help make Charlottesville a place where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
All right, and with that official action now being concluded, council will take a brief recess to rearrange seats, and the mayor will preside over the remainder of the meeting. Because I don't want this.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Same situation?
Scoot.
Oh, okay. I don't care.
Oh. Go ahead. I was just wondering.
Okay.
Oh, you're gonna be fine. All right. You should shake it up. I think that's fair.
It's a good idea.
Sam, I'll take the red folder.
That's fine.
Well, I locked it.
Do you need another?
Getting me in trouble. Is this yours?
The right hand always.
Yeah. Okay, I think we all set here, so we will resume our business, our work session with reports from the Environmental Regulations Policy and Review Project. So,
Good evening, counselors.
good evening.
My name is Tori Kanelopoulos, and I am on the long-range planning team with Neighborhood Development Services with the city. And today we have a work session on the Environmental Regulations and Policy Review Project. And I am joined today by my colleagues in multiple departments who will be also working on this project, including Public Works, Utilities, the Office of Sustainability, and other staff in NDS to help answer questions. The clicker is new for me. Oops.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, so today we will be starting with the project objectives and project background, talking briefly about city plans and programs that are related, and then walking through the proposed areas of study for each of the project topics. We'll have a few questions to guide the discussion for your feedback on draft project phasing and topics, and I will also cover next steps. So just to summarize what we're asking for at this work session, now that we've completed an internal review of existing conditions and current policies and regulations, we're asking for your direction on the proposed phasing and grouping of project topics. And there will be future work sessions and opportunities for input that dive into more detail on specific topics and recommendations once those have been developed. So the project objectives include balancing community and comprehensive plan priorities of housing choice and density with protecting the natural and built environments, increasing community resilience, ensuring alignment between regulations across topics, and using an equitable framework for prioritization and implementation. Some of the potential project outcomes include city code updates, including the development code, updated policies, including for the comprehensive plan, updates to city programs and policies, and coordination on related project and plans, which I'll talk about in more detail. So some information for the project background. This is really sharing why this project and why now. So it's relevant to both the comprehensive plan and the development code. The relevant comprehensive plan priorities guiding this work include implementing zoning changes to support housing choice and affordability while also protecting the natural environment, implementing the climate action plan, and preserving and enhancing the natural environment. And along the way with implementation of the development code, there have been some challenges, especially for smaller infill sites that have less room for gray and green infrastructure, such as stormwater management facilities and trees. Some other identified challenges and opportunities include mitigating and preparing for the impacts of climate change, planning for relevant infrastructure replacement and upgrades needed, and implementing and coordinating across related plans. So this slide may look familiar to some of you. It's from the NDS FY26 work plan, which was presented last summer. And since that presentation, NDS has been coordinating with departments across the organization to document existing conditions, policies, regulations, key takeaways, and areas for collaboration by project topic. We've met with staff from the Office of Sustainability, Public Works, Utilities, and Parks, and there will be additional departments involved at key points along the way. So these are some of the adopted and ongoing related plans and programs, and the project scoping that we've been doing has included incorporating relevant projects and initiatives, which have resources such as maps and data, community and developer input, and staff technical expertise. So I won't go through these each individually since they were provided in advance, and I will cover them in a little bit more detail when we talk about the project timeline. But I did want to call out that there are several actions in the Climate Action Plan that call for development code updates and coordination of land use and transportation planning, and that the Flood Resilience Plan has resulted in funding from the most recent round of the Community Flood Preparedness Fund grant. These are some of the concurrent related plans and programs. And there are others that we're tracking, including at the regional level, such as the Regional Water Supply Plan update and Regional Solid Waste Management Plan update. And it's only a partial list that will keep updated as we move along, including the city recently joining the Biophilic Cities Network and other projects that come up along the way. So now I'll walk through each of the 6 project topics in order of their proposed project phasing. The recommended areas of study have been identified based on staff's review of existing conditions and current regulations, comprehensive plan policies and recommendations, state code requirements and constraints, and related plans and programs as we just reviewed. And I also want to mention that while NDS is leading coordination, the upcoming work that I'll describe is being led and completed by a variety of staff across the city. So I want to recognize their work and their collaboration and how this effort really spans a variety of departments. So for stormwater management, we would review and consider updates to the city's stormwater management requirements, focused on feasibility of infill development and encouraging more on-site water quality treatment. We would also look at evaluating stormwater management infrastructure needs, including those identified in the Flood Resilience Plan. For floodplain management, we would look at the city's floodplain management program through that Flood Preparedness Fund grant to build a more robust floodplain management program. And we would review and consider updates to the city's floodplain development requirements. So changes would need to be justified on the grounds of protecting life and property from flood risk, and we would look at balancing density with protecting the natural and built environments. Updated regulations and other actions could also provide an opportunity to participate in the community rating system to lower flood insurance premiums. For tree canopy, we would look at updates to the city's requirements for tree canopy, street trees, and tree preservation with development within the constraints that we have from a state code standpoint. And we would also look at how to better incentivize tree preservation, as the current canopy bonus does not seem sufficient for developers to choose preservation over planting new trees. And we would look at data, findings, and recommendations from the Urban Forest Management Plan that's in progress. All of this work would also include continued coordination with the Tree Commission and build on the work being done by community partner organizations, including Relief Charlottesville and the Charlottesville Area Tree Stewards. For stream buffers, we would review and consider updates to the water protection ordinance requirements for stream buffers. There are currently 3 waterways in the city that have a designated protected buffer, which are the Ravenna River, Meadow Creek, and Moores Creek. And any additions or changes to designations would need to be data-driven and also consider resources for administration. We would also evaluate if additional incentives and voluntary measures are needed to protect stream buffers. Based on previous analysis, about half of all stream buffers in the city are protected in some form, either through the designated WPO buffer or through other measures such as being located in a public park, a conservation easement, or critical slopes. And voluntary measures and incentives could better protect additional streams on private property, even if they are not designated with a WPO buffer. For critical slopes, we would look at reviewing and considering updates to the city's critical slopes regulations. That would also include the special exception process, since we've heard feedback that the review criteria should be more objective and clear. And then also look at updates to comprehensive plan guidance, since there's currently only one comprehensive plan recommendation related to slopes and their value is not clearly defined. For energy efficiency, we would look at updates to standards for public and local government buildings. The Office of Sustainability will be leading an effort to establish high-performance building standards. We would also look at ways to better update and potentially incentivize tax credits and guidance for private development, such as modeling best practices or providing updated incentives. And then also use the forthcoming community EV charging plan to inform potential regulatory or policy changes, including a policy for charging across the public right-of-way. So these are the potential outcomes that have been identified by each project to date, and final outcomes will depend on data and findings, best practices, staff technical expertise, Planning Commission and City Council direction, and community input where needed. All topics should result in improved community resilience and adaptability to the effects of climate change, equitable prioritization and implementation, and updates to comprehensive plan policies with the 5-year review. So I've covered most of these in previous sections, but just to summarize briefly, they're focused mainly on code and policy updates, such as stormwater management requirements, an updated floodplain management program, and tree canopy and preservation requirements. So this is the proposed grouping and phasing of topics. This is a slide that we updated from the Planning Commission presentation based on their feedback. The proposed phasing is based on input from staff, alignment with related plans and programs, and impact on comprehensive plan implementation, including the development code. Much of the phasing tracks with parallel initiatives, and many topics overlap and will be addressed at the same time. We can also make revisions based on council's direction. So I'll take a moment to talk a little bit more about the project timeline, which is anticipated to be about 2 years total, but we would anticipate multiple deliverables along the way, depending on their complexity and their dependence on these parallel projects. We anticipate several of these projects to be completed this calendar year, including Resilient Together, the Urban Forestry Management Plan, and the EV Charging Plan. Other projects would extend into 2027, given their higher complexity and need for consultant expertise, such as the Community Flood Preparedness Fund grant and updates to stormwater regulations. And we have allocated funding for this project, and we are currently scoping which complex projects could best use support from consultants. And this is a summary of the Planning Commission's feedback from their October 28th meeting. So since this was provided in attachment 3, I'll just cover this as a high-level summary. They noted some additional topics to incorporate, including drought mitigation planning, wildfire risks, and resilience for our community and our infrastructure. They noted that regional coordination will be important for this project and noted some partners to coordinate with. And then also for project topic grouping and phasing, aligning projects with ongoing plans and studies mentioned, considering pairing critical slopes and stream buffer topics together, and where we can achieve quick wins earlier in the process. So these are the 2 questions to guide discussion today. If the recommended areas of study in attachment 1 capture the key areas of needed study for the 6 topics identified in the project, and if there are additional topics or supporting information that will be included. So just to make sure we have enough time, I'm going to cover next steps briefly, and then I'll jump back to these questions for discussion. So as mentioned, this is anticipated to be approximately 2 years as a process, with deliverables delivered early when feasible. And then we would be continuing to scope more detailed work plans by topic, and then establishing staff internal stakeholder groups or technical committees. And this slide is the only one that was changed from your packet in advance, and that was to add a QR code and a screenshot from the landing page on the Connect Charlottesville site, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So as we develop a public engagement plan, we will determine specific areas for community input. We recognize that there are many community organizations and committees that we can work with and draw on their expertise and community connections. We also want to hear and understand lived experiences from community members, and we would want community input on major policy changes and any significant proposed updates. So the engagement will use the newly launched Connect Charlottesville website, which is the city's new engagement platform through Social Pinpoint. And the project landing page is listed on the slide with that QR code to get to the project landing page. So we'll continue adding resources there and information about the project, and we'll add engagement opportunities as they become available. So with that, I'll try to go back to the questions. So essentially, we're asking if we are headed in the right direction, and if anything's missing, and if you need additional information as we move forward to inform feedback and decision points. So I'll stop there and turn it back over to you all, and we're available for questions. So thank you.
Lloyd, I'll start with you.
One question I had is something that we dealt with 3 or 4 years ago and wondered about ever since. There was a series of proposals that we looked at in 2022 that involved the floodplain down around Franklin Street and Hogwaller. And at that time, we learned that the floodplain lines had been redrawn in relatively recent fashion, much to the surprise of some of the folks who were living in the neighborhood. And one of the things that we talked about at that point was, and perhaps it was something related to this, was that there was a study coming that would provide more detail on floodplain issues in Moores Creek in particular. And I remember seeing, as I was reviewing things last night, that there was a reference to some of that, and I'm just wondering, where do we stand with that?
I think if I could ask maybe Jason to come up to talk about the Moores Creek stormwater modeling, if that might help answer the question.
Good evening, Council. I'm Jason Mackley. I'm the Deputy Director with Utilities. I'm not familiar with the study that you're talking about, but we have developed a model with our consultants for the 3 watersheds in the city, which is Moores Creek, Meadow Creek, and Rivanna. The first one that we completed was Moores Creek, which would include the area that you're talking about. And we can certainly look at running that model to see how the floodplain has been affected. Do you have any more details on what that looked like at the time?
I was just trying, as we were progressing with the meeting, to go back and find the page that had the reference that it talked about at something in 2023. I remember the discussions in 2022 because there were some housing developments that were being proposed for basically what we had thought was in the floodplain, and then because of some redoing of the floodplain lines was apparently no longer in the floodplain. We had experience just in the last year or so of a project in the county where the concern was that it was going to end up, it's basically right there on Franklin, it was going to end up distorting the floodplain lines in general. And one of the discussions that we had in 2022, when we were looking at the floodplain lines that had been modified a year or two earlier. One of those discussions was that there was supposed to be some new effort to reevaluate or redo those floodplain lines. And then, that just sort of by the way that things happen on city council, once that project moved on past our consciousness, we lost sight of it. And I hadn't had any sight of it until reading this just last night, indicating that there had in fact been something completed. And in particular, because there were concerns at the time in 2022 that the floodplain lines that were now in force through FEMA did not comport with what popular experience had been with where there were floods on Franklin Street. One of my hopes was going to be that as they were supposedly redoing this look at the floodplain, flood management and so on, that we would have a sense of whether the floodplain lines as they had been redrawn in the time a few years back were in fact accurate.
Understood. We can certainly take that as a priority when we're looking at our modeling to see if that makes sense, what we're finding. Brendan, do you recall the?
I think Dan and O'Connell and NDS might have an update.
Okay, you want to come up, Dan?
Hello, councilors. I'm Dan O'Connell. I'm NDS planner, and I'm also the acting city floodplain manager.
Okay.
So I believe what you're referring to is that FEMA is in the process of redrawing our flood maps. Our current maps are from 2006, I believe, and so we're due for an update. I was not floodplain manager at the time when this process kicked off, so I believe that when this process started, previous city employees and water resources people did provide feedback, as well as members of the public, to FEMA. But it is FEMA's responsibility, working with private engineers, to redraw those maps. I have heard it secondhand from a local engineer that we may be getting those maps given to us this year for us to look at and adopt. But
Meaning now 2026.
yes, they finally finished them, and we may have given them to review and to adopt this year. But I can't say any more on that for now.
Okay.
Can we choose not to adopt them or to amend them? What is the,
I don't think at this
Option
point
there.
there would be an opportunity to amend them, and just not adopting them would probably have very negative consequences
Yeah.
in terms of our membership in the NFIP.
Yeah.
But I think, as Tori mentioned, the flood maps are not precise. They don't show where it floods everywhere. And so they are just one tool to regulate the NFIP, to regulate flood insurance. It does flood elsewhere in the city that is not covered by those maps, and I think that's part of the project, to find those areas and make sure that we're doing what we can to mitigate that.
so we would adopt those, but then we could also have our own rules on top of
Yes,
that?
absolutely. We can adopt higher standards, we can adopt different standards to cover those areas too.
Just not lower standards.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
A slightly different question would deal with the area that the city bought that we refer to as 0 East High Street, where there had been a proposal that would have involved extensive building in and building up of the floodplain in a way that I had to think was clearly going to distort the rest of the floodplain simply by putting that much stuff into the floodplain. Obviously, the city now owns that land, but what we're going to decide we want to do with it a couple of years down the road, and I know it's not something that's going to be happening right away, is going to be surely determined in significant part by whether we think that the floodplain lines there are now accurate. And I would hope that as we look to plan for the development of or the use anyway, of 0 East High Street, that we make sure we're really comfortable with where that floodplain line seems to be.
So are you, just making sure we're getting back to the two questions, are you, you feel like on the right track? And
I hope so. I mean, the best thing I can do at this point is to flag areas of concern and interest, and I've now done so.
Okay, that's good. Michael?
Well, thank you. I think this is obviously very important work, given climate change and all our emergency planning. Flooding is identified as our biggest risk, and I think the neighborhoods most at risk are working-class neighborhoods like our mobile home parks, West Haven, Franklin Street. So as part of this process, is our climate team working with you all, or what departments are involved?
Yes, the Office of Sustainability is very involved in this project as well, and is leading a number of the parallel projects that are kind of informing this project, especially Resilient Together, our community's resilience and adaptation plan, which we've had quite a few meetings about. And that will also include stormwater management, floodplain, stream buffers, tree canopy. And so they've been very involved in this project, along with utilities, Department of Public Works, Parks and Recreation, other staff in NDS. So that's definitely an important lens for this project.
Presumably as a product of that, I mean, what kind of benchmarks are you looking at? Are you prioritizing flooding risk, impervious surfaces, or what are you trying to target?
So I don't know that we've established official benchmarks yet, but when we were pulling our existing conditions, we did try to look at the data that we already have and what gaps might be missing. For example, the Urban Forest Management Plan is looking at updated tree canopy for the city, which also breaks down by neighborhood, so we can see where there are neighborhoods that have significantly lower tree canopy compared to the city as a whole and compared to other neighborhoods. We have a lot of historic data on nuisance flooding complaints. We have data on the state of our infrastructure. So all of those will feed into identifying the highest priority issues to address.
And somewhat related to Lloyd's questions, in your presentation, you called out, the FEMA maps are outdated. I mean, the Trump administration is, they're going to reflect active climate denialism and just not be reflective of the existence of climate change. So if we do adopt stronger standards, how would we develop those? What would we base that on?
I think Dan or Crystal, if you want to comment. Thank you.
I think we have a Crystal Rittervold. I'm the director of the Office of Sustainability. I think we have a pretty unique opportunity to look at all of these environmental regulations with this lens of climate change, of resilience goals, of the development goals, and as it pertains specifically to what might we consider as different, be it stricter or modified floodplain-related policies. That's really part of the goal of the grant-funded project that we're going to embark on this year. So the State Department of Conservation and Recreation has a grant program called the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, and our application contemplated a review of sort of like a baseline analysis of our program, a gap analysis, some best practices, what are some of the tools and some of the strategies that are applicable in our area, and then we would come forward with some of the policy recommendations or options. So that's the point of that project, that we're finalizing the scope of work for it now, and hopefully we'll get a consultant on board ASAP. And that'll be, to Tori's point, very interdepartmental, which is why our office is leading it, because we're going to be tapping folks from every department that touch that topic to put this together.
Yeah, and to answer the two questions you posed, I think seems to be moving in the right direction. I think our biggest focus has to be planning for resiliency and that flooding risk. Albemarle has a couple of people die each year from flooding, and I do think once we get one tropical storm with the right path, it's going to be pretty severe consequences. So I would say prioritizing within city limits, trying to have as little impervious surface as possible, to me seems like an important goal. And again, just having that flooding risk and climate resilience as the front and center goal. And it's lower priority, but I would just offer on the critical slope waivers, we don't get that many of them, but from my memory of when we have gotten them, a lot of the cases are very, very site-specific, and I don't know if you could easily develop objective criteria that would perform better than just being able to take in, very specific site conditions. And it's anecdotal, but I've heard from some in the development community that areas that, not special use permits related to density or height, but other things that you used to have an opportunity for discretion decision-making that were made purely administrative, have actually held them up even longer. I would wonder if there's potentially some risk of that, depending on how, if critical slope waivers are made purely administratively, just because, again, they're just so site-specific. But thank you.
So you're good with, you feel like they're on the right track?
A long way to go, but it seems to definitely be in the right
Yeah.
direction.
Ms. Fleischer?
Thank you. Yes, to answer the question first, I feel like you're on the right track, and with such a robust deck, thank you so much for putting that together to help us understand that. Just so I'm clear, are you integrating those additional topics to incorporate from the Planning Commission, or you're asking if we want those incorporated?
Thank you. That is a good question. We were planning to incorporate those, but happy to hear if you all have feedback as well on them.
I think that keeping those on there as you plan is great, and really looking forward to the community engagement piece of determining that community resilience and infrastructure, particularly because we're missing a lot of that data out of our federal data portals now. So getting that on the ground, I think, will really inform some of that action. And I really appreciate the celebrating the quick wins en route, because you're organizing so many departments whenever we can. I think that's great for the public to stay together with us on that. That's it.
Yeah, this is a huge project. There's a lot of pieces to this. And I appreciate that you did cover a lot, and then I agree that the Planning Commission additional topics fit in there nicely as a couple of other things to add to that task list. The regional coordination noted especially, because we are not isolated. And anything that affects us is going to affect the region and vice versa. The coordination amongst departments is something that I am excited about, and also want to make sure we don't miss opportunities for things. For example, something that came to mind was in working with Public Works and their repaving, restriping, and working with transit planning, the opportunity to use corners that we're going to daylight as bioswales. Like, that's something that involves like 4 different departments, and something like that is going to be, beneficial for the mitigation part, as well as the transit part and the pedestrian safety and that sort of thing. So I'm not saying make bioswales the #1 topic to work on, but just as an example of interdepartmental coordination, I'm hoping that system works well. There's clear channels of communication, and also it doesn't bog down the process too much, because I don't want to miss those opportunities, but I want to get things done so that we can celebrate wins. I do really appreciate the highlighting of both equitable implementation and engagement, because those are things that historically have not been done well. I'm not saying Charlottesville specific, but in general, we all know that lower income neighborhoods have less tree canopy, as Michael mentioned, often are in a floodplain, more in danger of floodplains than higher income neighborhoods. And then engagement is something that we've all been talking about, working on improving in the last couple of years. And so the Charlottesville Connect site is a great addition to that, but just like prioritizing that, because that's kind of a #1 piece of feedback we get is, we didn't know about it, or when were you going to tell us, or how I missed the survey, that sort of thing. And that's partly what we can do better of, is getting out there and talking to people about it, but having an easy resource for them on a web page, a link, even adding the QR code to this was helpful. I do have a specific question before I kind of complete my comments. In the stormwater management recommended areas of study, there was a bullet point about the code when land disturbance of 6,000 square feet or more. Just for like general knowledge, does disturbance mean like disturbed during the construction process, but if it's put back the way it was, does that count as a disturbance? Or is it something that is permanently becoming impermeable?
I think I'll let Brennan, our city engineer, explain.
Good evening, councilors.
Evening.
So the answer is yes. It is, if it's disturbed during construction, and that's kind of the statewide definition of land disturbance.
Okay,
So-
so, yeah, I appreciate that, kind of, that bullet point making the point that some smaller lots don't have space for, say, the ADU and like a retention pond. But so is there a way that we can be specific about, like, if you repave the driveway in like a permeable grid pattern instead of asphalt, does that,
Yeah, so I
Is that
mean,
part of what's being
we're in
reviewed?
extremely early discussions of what it would mean. But we're looking at kind of rewriting ours, because our water protection ordinance as it relates to the stormwater is way stricter than the state. So we can kind of modify that in different ways. It could be, lessening that somewhat, but creating something under it. So, things that might be 3,000 square feet now that aren't regulated at all might have to do something, but it's less than, what's required or more than what's required currently. But we'd be capturing more of it, so we're trying to offset maybe some of those things. So that may be a possibility. It could be, rain barrels, it could be permeable pavers, it could be a whole litany of other kind of stormwater management stuff that we're kind of looking at possibly capturing more of the smaller lots and maybe
like a
easing
menu of mitigation available for
Correct,
people?
yeah. So we don't know exactly where that's gonna land yet, but that's kind of where we're discussing right now.
Okay, great, thank you. Appreciate that clarification. What else did I highlight? Okay, so back to the questions. Right direction. Incorporating the planning commission notes into that. And then, it's such a broad base of things that are already being covered. And again, when we add the planning commission feedback, that I'm not gonna add anything else to that plate right now. Thanks.
I think you're on target for questions 1 and 2. I just had a couple of kind of comments, and it may be something new. You had mentioned a flood grant at the beginning. Is that, can you tell me a little bit about that grant? Is it?
So the Community Flood Preparedness Grant is a funding opportunity that the state makes available to local governments. The stormwater model that Jason referenced was funded by that same funding source.
Okay.
The flood resilience plan that we had adopted in 2023 is funded by that same source. And that made us eligible to pursue additional funding. And so that's $360,000 that you all appropriated a couple of months back. We have very small local match, and so it'll be a substantial project to try and sort of bring our floodplain management program in line with and consistent with the various other challenges that we're trying to balance.
So, yeah, that's good that it was a state grant, kind of going.
Yes, it is good.
Yeah, because I know that, as Michael mentioned, some of the federal funding may be going away, so.
And as an aside, the funding actually comes from the state's participation in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. So it's the revenue from that participation that is actually the source of funding, because there's a recognition that climate change is driving increased flooding risks. And so looking at taking proactive approaches to floodplain management is connecting some dots.
Thank you. So my last kind of comment is that something, at least when I first got on council's project, the Kindlewood, when they were starting that project, they had cut down all the trees, or a lot of the trees, and that was something that was a gap in our regulations. I just want to make sure that things like that that we are not like overlooking some obvious things, things like that. So I just want to make sure that as part of our review policy and things like that, that we are doing what we can to kind of keep those more mature trees instead of trying to, it may be easier to cut them down and then, plant some more, but, so I just wanted, can someone comment on that, so.
Sure. I'll ask Steve Gaines, our urban forester, to come comment.
I did a tour with Steve on the downtown mall. He knows every tree by name, I think, so it's amazing.
Good evening, councilors.
Good
Steve Gaines, urban forester. So right now it's difficult to get the tree preservation written into specific site plans. There is a process. Generally speaking, unless a tree is already specifically called out for preservation in the planning process, it's generally not considered for preservation unless it's specifically designated. And to go along with that, generally there is a preservation plan associated with that. There is not much incentive from the city side, other than Tori had mentioned the canopy credits. That's really about it. So we are, I'm working with the Tree Commission, and we're also working with folks in NDS to actually have more of a front and center pamphlet for site, for the site preservation and, the development planning process. So when developers have their initial meeting to discuss planning, they will have this preservation plan packet, and they'll be able to plan accordingly for how they're going to designate and save these trees. We find that it's definitely easier to preserve the trees if it's identified very early in the process. When you get towards the end of the development process, it's very hard to say, oh, got to go back and save these trees.
Yeah.
So it's a plan and process. I think there are other cities that have a pretty good model to go by, and we're very much looking into that.
Can I be part of this whole process that we're going through now?
Sure.
Yeah. That's something I want to add it then.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I've got a quick
Oh,
question
yeah.
about trees now that you're up here, Mr. Gaines. Hello. Which is something that I know was a point of consideration when the zoning was being discussed a couple years ago, was setbacks to allow space for trees on private property, which are, it's making a zero-sum game out of space for greenery and space for people to live. And something that I was hoping to push more for, and it's noted on here, but I just want to call out this bullet point and kind of make that a point of emphasis, was additional street trees, which can be put on public property, which there's probably rules that Brennan knows about, like, where they can be used with regards to cars, but that's a lot of public space that we have available, and I do support a strong urban street tree program, since that is, where we can make it not a zero-sum game with livability.
Sure. And one of the focuses of the urban forest management plan is we actually inventoried, or I guess we did a sample inventory of all of our street trees. And essentially what we have found is that we need to have more of a robust program for maintenance, for one thing. But what we were really finding is that we have room to plant smaller trees like dogwoods and redbuds. We are running very low on room to plant large diameter trees, and trees that are going to grow to be very large.
Yeah.
That's why we really want to focus more on preserving the large diameter trees that we have. So a lot of this tree preservation discussion that we're having broadly, I think it's very timely, and I'm glad it's being addressed. So I'm certainly glad to have Mayor Wade on board. So.
Yes.
Thanks.
Other comments? Thank you. so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're on the right track, so thank you. Next, we will have Bill Moyer with the Ravenna Authority Executive Director to give an update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Sanders. I do appreciate having a few minutes to tell you about the programs that the Ravenna authorities manage for the community in the city and some of the exciting projects we have going on. So, I can operate this guy. So we're governed by a board of directors, and Mr. Sanders is a member of our Water and Sewer Board of Directors, along with Laura Hildebrand, the Director of Utilities, along with members of the County Administration and the Albemarle County Service Authority Administration. You see we have a blank there, so we look forward to the next appointment from your group to our Water and Sewer Board. And we serve as a wholesaler for drinking water. So we sell to your Department of Public Utilities as well to the county through its Albemarle County Service Authority. We manage 5 water supply reservoirs, and the 3 at the top, South Ravenna, Sugar Hollow, and Ragged Mountain, or the property outside the water area are all city properties. So those are city properties. We manage all 5. The 2, Beaver Creek and Todier Creek in Scottsville, are county-owned properties outside the reservoir area. So this is where we get all of our drinking water. We have 6 water treatment plants. The observatory plant is on leased property from the University of Virginia on Observatory Mountain, the South Ravenna on 29 North, North Ravenna also out on 29 North. Those 3 serve the city and the urban areas of the county. We have 3 what we call county plants at Scottsville, Red Hill, and Crozet. Those water treatment plants serve those communities, and we operate them all. We have 4 wastewater treatment plants. Our largest plant is at Moores Creek on the left, and all of the wastewater from the city and most of the all the wastewater from the urban areas of the county, including Crozet, come to the Moores Creek plant. We treat about 10 million gallons per day there. We produce about 10 million gallons of drinking water every day, so it's almost equal in and out. We also manage 3 additional wastewater treatment plants at Scottsville, at Stone Robinson Elementary School, and also in the Glenmore subdivision for the county service authority. We have our own drinking water laboratory, so we do our own drinking water analysis and wastewater analysis, and we have to report those results almost daily to the Virginia Department of Health. We do that in-house. The pride of our drinking water treatment program are our granular activated carbon filters. So the big white tanks you see in the picture are filled with a dark carbon material. All the raw water, untreated water goes through those carbon filters and takes out many contaminants to help us remove them from our drinking water. So PFAS, per and polyfluorinated alkaline substances. This is one of the leading technologies to remove that emerging contaminant. So we're thrilled that we have these filters. They were expensive to install and build, and they're expensive to maintain, but they do help us provide a high-quality drinking water for our community. Our wastewater treatment is a biological process where the microbes reduce the nutrients in the wastewater, and this is an aeration basin over at Moores Creek. And the bugs, as we call them, there devour the nutrients that come in through the wastewater. The end product of that process are what we call biosolids. After the wastewater sludge is pumped into a dryer, we dry it out, we spin it, and it creates the product that goes onto a trailer, and we haul it to Waverly, Virginia, and it's put into a composting facility where they make compost. So we produce about 15,000 tons of biosolids in 2024. So biosolids either have to be land applied, land filled, Or for our case, we send it to a compost facility and they reuse it with other products. It's a really interesting plant they have in Waverly. They have food compost that goes into the mix. We visited and we saw money from the Federal Reserve that they dumped into the mix and they grind it up. It was interesting. And they make compost at the McGill Environmental Facility. So that's how we get rid of our biosolids from our community. And then ultimately on the left is an ultraviolet light disinfection program. When all the wastewater has been treated, it goes through the UV lights, it's disinfected, and then we put it back through the outfall there into Moores Creek. So again, we produce about 10 million gallons a day of drinking water, and we treat about 10 million gallons per day of wastewater. Some of our major projects that 2025 was a terrific year for us. We were able to get construction started on a number of these major projects that will increase our community's water supply. And this goes back to 2002 when the community had a significant drought of record. And in 2012, this council and the Albemarle supervisors crafted a plan to increase the drinking water for our community. It included building a larger dam at Ragged Mountain that was completed at the Ragged Mountain Reservoir. And then because Ragged Mountain does not have a sufficient water supply to fill it, we have to pipe water. Right now it comes from Sugar Hollow Reservoir, but this plan is on the purple line to build a pipeline from the South Ravenna Reservoir all the way to Ragged Mountain, and that's how we will keep Ragged Mountain full. And so this pipeline, the Purple project, is now awarded and construction will start soon. This red section is adjacent to the Birdwood Golf Course, and we tried to think proactively, and when that golf course was renovated in 2018 by the foundation, we put in a mile of this piping then. Mr. Snook was on our board at that time, I believe, to help us make that decision. And so we've already built that pipe. The brown line here is under construction. You may know we are clearing trees around Ragged Mountain Reservoir so that we can add 12 feet of water, and we're going to increase the capacity by 700 million gallons. Ragged Mountain Reservoir will hold 2.1 billion gallons when we're finished with removing the trees, and we start putting more water into Ragged. The dam was already built in 2014 to the ultimate height, so we're not increasing the dam height. And if you go there, you'll see the stone riprap on the water side. So that was built to add 12 feet of additional water in Ragged Mountain. So we're poised to do that as soon as we can get the trees cleared this year. And then we'll transfer water from Sugar Hollow as long as there's over 30 million gallons a day overflowing Sugar Hollow. And ultimately, though, with the purple line, this pipe that I pointed to, 6.5 miles of piping here, that will fill Ragged Mountain Reservoir. We're building a new pump station here on Reservoir Road. And then this pipe to get water from Ragged Mountain Reservoir to the Observatory Treatment Plant is under construction now. And also then from the treatment plant, we're building a new pipe that's going to weave through the city, and we've called it the Central Water Line. That's under construction, and that will distribute treated water to the residents of the city as well to the county. It's a major interstate type pipe, large pipe, 30-inch pipe that will help us move major amounts of water throughout our water distribution system. So several $100 million in projects that we have underway. And this is the Central Waterline project I mentioned. Right now we're working over at Stadium Road and Lewis Road north of the railroad track and getting the work done on UVA property here during winter break. Probably next month we will bore under the railroad track, and then we will go on a private property for a short distance up to JPA and start installing the pipe down Jefferson Park Avenue. We turn the corner onto Cleveland, and then we go to the north on Cherry Avenue, all the way to, ultimately till we get to East High Street at Long Street Bridge. The pink line is under construction. The blue line, we're still doing some design work. It's what we call Phase 2. And that, we anticipate asking this council for an easement on the project that you mentioned, Mr. Snook, down by the Ravenna River. So in a few months, we may be asking for an easement to install that pipe along the western boundary of that property owned by the city. So that project's under construction, and in about 4 years, it will be finished. We also operate the Ravenna Solid Waste Authority, which this council and the Albemarle Board created in 1990. And that mission is to manage the refuse and recycling programs for the community. We transfer all of the refuse that we receive out of the county. Right now it goes to Henrico County via a private hauler to a private landfill. But we try to recycle as many items as we can. We have 28 employees in this authority, a $10 million budget, which is half of that's funded by disposal fees, and the other half is funded from the county and the city from your tax revenues. And that's primarily for the city to support recycling programs. Sorry, so
Bill, just
back.
before you move on,
Okay.
there's questions. You had mentioned the recycling, and this may be old, but I thought it went to Zion Crossroads, but that's previous,
long time ago.
Okay.
We bid it out to the market to take the refuse from Ivy, where all the trash that we take goes to the Ivy Solid Waste and Recycling Center. And so that's there on this top left. That's the Ivy transfer station. So all the refuse comes in this driveway here, and it dumps its load on the floor, and then we push it, and there's a big hole at the back of the facility, and there's a truck underneath, and that's how we fill the truck, and then that goes to Henrico essentially almost every day. And so we do not landfill any refuse at Ivy anymore. That hasn't happened since about the year 2000, 25 years.
Wow.
And so that's where we manage post-closure of the landfill and making sure that there's no erosion and with gas management program. We have vegetative waste disposal there and clean fill disposal at Ivy. We manage the McIntyre Recycling Center, which the city participates significantly in that. We also have the Southern Albemarle Convenience Center as a recycling station, and then at Ivy we have recycling facilities. And this council is supporting a new baling facility that we're building at the Ivy Solid Waste Center. And there we take all the paper and cardboard and plastic products, and we bale those products into cubes, and then they put on tractor trailers and conveyed to where the market wants to pay the most at the time. So to the transfer, we bid that out, and we let the market tell us where to take it and at what cost. And so that's how the current vendor decided to use a private landfill in Henrico. It was going to Amelia, to a private landfill in Amelia County, but that was a different vendor.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I think I skipped one of the slides that about water and sewer. I'm sure you're really interested. That I did skip this, that Water and Sewer Authority was created in 1972. We were reauthorized by this council and the county board in 2022. The Virginia Water and Wastewater Authorities Act that the state enacted says every 50 years an authority has to be reauthorized. And so we remembered to do that. And our charge is to provide the drinking water and wastewater for the city and the county. We have 106 employees. We have a $64 million annual budget, but noteworthy, over half of our budget is to pay debt service on the revenue bonds that we have. That's how we borrow money to pay for $560 million in capital improvements. So we carry all the major infrastructure for drinking water and wastewater. We carry that debt, and we provide those programs for the city and the county. And those funds do not include any tax dollars. They are all water and sewer revenue from ratepayers. The only exception to that is we do get some grants. We've gotten about $10 million in grants from the federal government through the Emerging Contaminants Program, and I suppose they would be tax dollars. So, but that's the only exception to that.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Fleischer, you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay.
Lloyd?
Just to clarify, I didn't come on the board till 2020, so if that thing happened in
Okay.
2018, that was before my time.
I was trying to give you credit.
I'm trying to make me old.
No.
I was on the board for 2 years, and then when Brian Pinkston joined council, his natural expertise was such that we were delighted to loan him to you for 4 years. So anyway,
Yes.
familiar with the way you all work, and I've in a number of instances tried to encourage the various city departments to follow some of the reporting techniques that you have used that were always very helpful to me when I was on the board. I have no questions at this point. Oh, I do have one question. Is there any move to add any other kinds of things that can get recycled? You know, I'm constantly getting emails saying, why can't we recycle this? And of course, my answer is, well, that's RSWA's issue, and if they see a market, maybe.
Yes, sir. Well, we are initiating a program that our board approved to start recycling lithium batteries because they have been a big problem. They started a fire in our transfer station. They've started fires in several of the trailers that haul the refuse to Henrico. And so we are working on a lithium battery program. We've got to buy a special facility to keep them in that's fireproof. So we're working on that. But we get, what's the paddleball game?
Pickleball.
Pickleball, you know, we got a pickleball container. We get lots of special requests too. And we're glad to provide those programs, but ultimately there's a cost, and where do we take the products? That's the big challenge of recycling, is having a demand for the products. And how far do you have to ship them, and is it worth the cost? And of course, these costs come back to council and the county. And so we work closely with Mr. Hicks from the county, from the city, on your budget. So that's always a thing we talk with them about.
So is there going to be some lithium battery recycling, or is that just
Yes.
something that still thinking about? Or?
No, we've approved it. We're bidding out a facility to purchase the facility, and it'll be at Ivy, located at Ivy, we believe. We may have other locations for a similar facility, but no, that is going to happen. Our board's approved it, and we're going to get that going as soon as we can get the container purchased.
Good, thank you.
Ms. Ostrand?
Hey, thanks. Thank you for your presentation. My first question is for the granular activated carbon filters. You call them the pride and joy, and you mentioned they were expensive to install and build and maintain. How long do they last?
Well, the carbon in there is depending on how much water you run through, but let's say the product lasts about a year, and then we have to replace it. And it's several $1 million that we have across all of our treatment plants to replace the carbon annually.
Gotcha, okay. Thanks. And then, I can scroll down. For the last slide with all the different services, and just kind of ties into what Lloyd was just talking about, other things. Has there been a bigger discussion at any point recently about a city, or maybe not county-wide, but citywide compost program for household compost, not, the large-scale vegetative debris that was mentioned here, but anything like that?
Well, we did a study a number of years ago, and it was a significant investment to have a compost facility constructed. And, Ravenna used to have a compost program out at Ivy, the long white bags, and we put the compost in it and it was turned. I don't think that worked. That was before my time. That didn't work out very well. So there have been some studies through the decades of composting. There's a fairly significant investment to do that. But we'd be glad to take a look at it again if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, I was recently visiting family in Seattle where they do it citywide. And in fact inspect trash cans to see if you haven't
really?
composted.
I see.
Yeah, so,
And in your city, you pick up the refuse through your vendor.
Yes.
And where Ravenna doesn't pick up, we don't
Yeah.
have any collection facilities, we just receive.
Mhm.
And we have a container at Ivy and for compost if people bring it there. So we do compost food waste, but we don't have a major program yet.
okay, thanks. And then I know recently there was the rain event and one of the, I'm getting the details wrong and it's fuzzy, one of
Pump
the
station?
things somewhere failed. Yes, thank you.
January of 2024.
Yes.
Time flies. Yes, ma'am.
Time
That's
does
been fully restored, and we had to rebuild it because it was flooded from the inside, not necessarily from the outside.
Mhm.
And we had some challenges, and we hopefully we corrected those, and it has been rebuilt and it's back in operation.
That's great to hear, but the kind of question, especially in the context of the presentation we just received about flood mitigation and wildfires and, potential
Mhm.
natural disasters that are coming our way, what kind of climate disaster resilience program do we have? Do we need to improve it?
We received a grant from the federal government for about $200,000 to do a flood resilience study, and we've got that ongoing for our facilities. Because wastewater facilities are by their nature usually close to streams,
Mhm.
pump stations, because we want gravity flow in the sewer system, and so you're typically following the topography, and that puts you in your streams. So we have a study ongoing, and we're trying to implement in our CIP a project to enhance the resilience of our facilities in case the floods get worse, because that's what climate change has said to us, that droughts are going to be longer and more intense, and you need more storage in your reservoirs to survive it. So that's part of our initiative to expand our water supply. But when it rains, it's going to pour cats and dogs in an intense storm, and that's when the flooding of your facilities is going to be an issue. So we're working on a study for that very issue.
When's the study? What's the length of the study?
This calendar year, and within the next 6 months, we'll have information about that. And it'll probably tell us about a number of projects that we could or should build to protect our facilities. That Moores Creek is right next to Moores Creek. And we have two major pump stations, the one you mentioned. We have a second pump station there that are on the banks of the creek, so to speak. And so they're prime candidates for some kind of protection, but it's a significant expense to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, speaking of flooding, as was mentioned, that was decade old. A couple inches of rain led to a catastrophic failure. I know you've identified what went wrong. Have you, is there like a finalized cost the repair is going to?
Yes, sir.
And how much was covered by
It
insurance?
cost about $14 million to restore the plant. Our insurance covered $10 million, and we covered $4 million. Because we did make some improvements that, almost like your automobile insurance, they want to replace in like kind. If you want an improvement, you have to pay for it. So we did make some improvements in the facility that we paid for, and that was our $4 million contribution. So the total cost was about $14 million.
On the central water line, you referenced in the coming months there's going to be a decision on the exact location of that piece of it that overlaps with Riverview Park area. What will be the process for deciding the location? Because that will obviously have a significant impact on both the amount of tree canopy cut down in Riverview Park as well as easements for what can or cannot, be built in areas?
Yes, sir. We're working with your neighborhood development department on a site plan to set forth exactly where the pipe will be and what trees. We've done a tree survey of what trees would be impacted and what trees we could replant to replace any of the impacted trees. So that process is ongoing. We hope in the next month or so we'll have a plan to NDS and receive their comment.
And just quick clarification, is it going through Riverview Park or Zero East High?
Excuse me, what was
Zero
that?
East High,
It's Zero East High,
the
so not,
location of the water line.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right. It's
Yeah.
what you call it, zero.
Zero East High. It is a park with a river view, but there is also Riverview Park.
Yeah, I think our plan is on what I call the westernmost property line of that. So the river would be on the east or the south, and we're trying to hug the western property line to not impact your property more than necessary.
Yeah, but certainly the community in terms of using it, it's de facto extension of Riverview Park in terms of how it's experienced from people going there. And depending on the decision we make, what's the amount of feet on either side you have to clear and have permanently cleared?
We usually have a 40-foot easement for most of our pipes.
So, you're potentially talking about, a pretty significant impact.
40 feet, yes, sir. And we allow some vegetation to be planted back, sort of like your forester was saying, small trees, small bushes, but we don't really encourage the oaks and the major trees to go back there.
And what will be the process for determining exactly where you put it? Is it going to be a decision made by the RWSA board that then comes to city council, or?
Well, we will rely on our consultant to recommend the best location, and it's submitted to your utilities and our NDS department, and we'll receive their comments and whether they want to make any adjustments to that alignment or not.
Mm-hmm. And final question, I know this is outside of our city council purview, but Albemarle County has been discussing recently the possibility of allowing data centers by right, depending on the scale, if they make any change. Louisa County, I think their estimate is in the summer it'll use up over 60% of reservoir capacity. Is that something that RWSA as an agency is thinking about, just the possibility that all these redundancies and system capacity improvements created as a result of a drought, depending on what decisions are made, the benefit of that will just flow to Google, Meta, Facebook, Meta is Facebook.
Well, we are working with the county on all of their development projects, the AstraZeneca project on 29 North, the project on Afton Scientific on Avon Street as an example, and obviously UVA Foundation on 29 North. So most of the major development that we hear about is on 29 North, and we are preparing some preliminary projects to address that in order to get, because that is at the extreme north end of our system. We need better piping and maybe a tank, a water storage tank at Airport Road. All of those projects, though, most all of them, we have what's called the Northern Area Water Agreement between the city and the Service Authority and Ravenna, and everything north of the South Ravenna River is fully funded by the Albemarle County Service Authority. So if that's part of your question, but we are considering the demands of these facilities relative to the storage and capacity that we will have, not only in storage. We have to have three things to get drinking water to your faucet. We have to have storage in reservoirs, we have to have treatment in our plants, adequate capacity, and then we have to have the piping in place to get it to you. So it doesn't solve the problem just to build a bigger reservoir. We've got to be able to get that water to a treatment plant, to treat it, and then to distribute it to your faucets. So we look at all three of those as we do our water supply and demand studies. Every 10 years we do a study. We measure our reservoirs with a airplane surveying effort, bathymetric survey it's called. We measure how much water is in our reservoirs. We meet with your planning departments and county planning departments and UVA and project growth out for the next 10 years, and then we try to equate those two things. We have supply and we have demand. Do we have adequate supply to meet the demand? And that's what then feeds into our capital improvement program of the $560 million that you saw of, well, we need to build a larger plant, we need to build a larger pipe, we need more storage, and we integrate all that together.
Well, I definitely think it should be on our radar with the Rivanna Futures projects, National Ground Intelligence Center combined with UVA Data Science Center. I think our area is certainly going to be targeted for that industry. Just acknowledgement that over the past couple of years, I think the increase has been a couple $100s for individuals. I'm not saying these projects aren't good or necessary, but obviously it's become a pretty significant cost to consumers, and I'm sure, given the scale of the capital projects, there's going to be future increases as well. But
yes, sir.
Again, which is not to say these things aren't necessary. But
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Any questions or comments? I did have one kind of, is there anything keep you up at night, Bill, that we are not doing?
Well, we had a water break on Christmas Eve that kept me up a little bit, trying to get water restored and get the boil water notice for everyone north of Airport Road out to North Rivanna River was in a boil water. You know, we don't have to look far to see what happened in the city of Richmond last winter when they were on a boil water and no water for a week. And so what keeps us up is aging infrastructure that we know we need to replace, but yet when we struggle within our budgets because we're competing with two things, you know, affordability, but yeah, we want to have dependability, and sometimes it's hard to align those, and we try to do our best with that. So we don't gold plate, we don't go for the max, but we push hard to get what we need as far as infrastructure for capacity and growth, but infrastructure replacement for the thousands of devices and pumps and transformers that we already have. That keeps us up. The other thing is regulations. You know, I talked about our granular activated carbon helps to remove PFAS, PFAS. The next concern that we have from the regulators is they're going to ask us to remove it from wastewater. And that is going to be a significant capital cost if that should occur. Because why? Well, because the wastewater has PFAS, it goes back into the river, and now it's back in the river. So that's a lot of discussion around the country about don't land apply biosolids because they have PFAS in them, and don't put any PFAS back in any of our streams. Well, that sounds nice, but it's going to be a major filtering process to have to not only filter 10 million gallons of drinking water, but to filter 10 million gallons of wastewater every day doubles our challenge. So we'll see where that goes. Good question.
Is there anything the average consumer could do differently to make it easier on treatment and?
Well, you know, we have pretty active in the city and the county and service authority have active conservation programs encouraging conservation, and that's always an important thing that they can do. Be aware of how much water you use and how you use it. We tend to say water is one of the least expensive utilities that any consumer has when they look at their electric bill, their cell phone bill, their gas bill. Water is fairly inexpensive, and so the challenges with that, and people may or may not want to conserve as much as maybe they could.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other action or comments, Sam, or anything?
That's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.
We're going to be read into closed session.
Pursuant to Section 2.2-3712 of the Virginia Code, I move that this City Council close this open meeting and convene in a closed session as authorized by the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as follows. pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2 Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A7 for consultation or briefing with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. The subject matter to be discussed is a case filed with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And number 2, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 for discussion and consideration of prospective candidates to be appointed to the following boards and/or committees, the Board of Architectural Review.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed, please say no. Okay, thank you. We'll be back at 6:30.